Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you to transform me to we through your very own process of doing dating better. And how about if we do dating better through adding more humor? That's the purpose of today's podcast recording. I brought my good buddy, Frank Chindamo, onto the show. Frank, I've known for like 23 years since I first started my company. I'll tell you who he is. He's the founder and CEO of Laugh M.D. It's all about humor and health. He uses comedy videos as therapeutic care, especially in hospitals and addiction recovery centers. So he's a certified humor professional, and he got that from the Association of Applied Therapeutic Humor. Who knew there was such a thing? Frank Chindamo, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Julie. How are you doing?
Well, just awesome. Do you remember when we met like 23 years ago at some networking event in LA?
Yes, I do. And you thought that I was an eligible enough bachelor to get fixed up, and you did, and I was always grateful for that. Thank you.
And what happened in the end? Are you happily attached to some lucky lady?
I am. Her name is Tasha, and she's a realtor, and she is the love of my life.
Oh, so good to hear. Now, I always have to ask people, how did you meet? Like, how did you actually meet? And how did it become like the first date? What happened?
Well, let's see. You had trained me well in the art of online dating. And so Tasha and I met through an online dating service called, but we met through that service, and it was the kind where you answer a lot of questions about yourself and, what sort of person are you, and your morals and your values and your likes and your dislikes and all that sort of a thing. And I think the thing that Tasha and I had in common was that we both answered the most questions in the history of this app. Well, it was right in the heart of COVID. And so there weren't a lot of better things to be doing, you know? And I think the kudos go to Tasha because she uh, overcame her fears to meet somebody in person and come out and come on a physical date. She was totally bubbled up down where she was living in one of the beach cities. So um, she she overcame that. We went to an open air restaurant at the top of a building in downtown Los Angeles. I still highly recommend it, Takami Sushi. And it was great. We met and we both realized like we have very little in common on the surface, but our morals and values were very similar. And so that was helpful, and that led to second, third, and more.
I love that. I really enjoy matching people along the lines of, first off, shared values and then shared
Mm.
passions. And so, in what ways were you not in alignment, and how have those worked out, given that you had the important things in common?
So I was living up in the Hollywood Hills. She was living down in the beach cities. Geographically, we were at least 40 miles and God almighty, 15 towns apart, right? Culturally, very different. I was leading a very kind of showbiz Hollywood lifestyle. She was living a quiet existence as a realtor and with a close-knit set of friends and family down there. So were it not for Cupid, there's no possibility we would have met. There were no concentric circles.
Now, you have a very outgoing, playful, fun personality. Is she more reserved, more still waters run deep?
Ah, boy, you'd have to ask her that, I think. I mean, she is incredibly energetic, obviously very beautiful, energetic, um, always on the go, and always has a new project that she's working on. So, in terms of outgoingness, well, let's put it this way, you wouldn't call her an introvert.
Beautiful. This is sounding like a modern day partnership, which I love, where
Yeah.
men and women both bring similar qualities, but obviously they're distinctly different. Isn't
Mhm.
that nice? I'm glad to see it. So, who is the person in your relationship who does the planning of your social events?
Oh, Tasha. Yeah,
Okay, to know.
Tasha. Yeah.
Women are often telling me they want to be with the man with the plan. And if the man doesn't have the plan for the first date and the second date and the third date, then she wants to toss him in the trash. But I ask them to reserve that judgment because in a relationship, it's usually us girls who are making those plans.
Right, exactly. I think we see my friends about a tenth as much as we see our friends and family. Yeah.
Interesting. And in terms of communication and talking about the tough stuff, when there are issues, I'm sure you guys never have issues like the rest of us, but if you were to have issues, who initiates the communication conversation? Are you asking for it or is she?
That's more me. I would
Interesting.
think so. Yeah.
What a cool guy. I love it. Wonderful, wonderful. Now let's talk about what you're doing with your company. I went on to my app on my iPad to see if I can just download the app. Tell us about it. And do you have to be going through a doctor in order to get in, or can anybody enjoy the app?
What we're doing is this. There are 400 studies thus far that were done by scientists and medical people showing one way or another that laughter is ameliorative, that it is good medicine, right? And after each of those 400 studies, do you know what action those scientists and medical personnel took?
Nothing?
Nothing. They did nothing. They
Because
went,
they
okay, well, laughter is good for the heart. Now let's find out if, rats enjoy Skittles in space. Right? So
they
nothing,
needed
nothing
somebody
was
with a
done.
sense of humor. And it took somebody with a sense of humor to build it out, and that was Frank Chindamo.
Well, it's funny. I'm a weird person in that I started my career at SNL, so there's some scripts from SNL up there and on Ghostbusters. So you see the Ghostbusters. Where is it? There it is.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Script from Ghostbusters. So I worked, with the cast on that, um, and always worked in comedy and was a comedy producer, and then became a comedy filmmaker for like HBO, and that's what those awards are for. Uh, and after that became a professor of like making comedy videos at USC and UCLA and universities like that. And I would always tell my students, you can't just make films because it's a collaborative medium, it's expensive, and you got to do something with it. You have to commercialize it in some way. And that was, of course, before the dawn of TikTok and all that, or in this case, the sunset of TikTok. Um, but the thing that I realized was the best thing to do with my comedy videos was to put them into medical settings because my dad and my stepdad and then my youngest brother all passed away in hospitals. And when you're in a hospital, you're looking up at a TV and it's probably commercial television and they were playing like the news, which is really depressing and stressful, or talk shows that are really depressing and stressful, or there are certain networks that trigger people. I won't say which ones, but and that will promote the production of cortisol and adrenaline in your system, which are the death and the fight or flight hormones, the opposite of what you need for healing. So it's as if you're in the hospital and they're like feeding you cotton candy and broken glass.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm so glad that you developed it. So anybody can go and download the app Laugh MD and start laughing.
No, we have been doing our own studies. So I talked about the 400 studies. So we've done 5 studies now, two at USC, one at Chapman, and the most recent one at AT Still University in Phoenix. So because we're doing scientific testing with it, it's not yet released to the public, but stay tuned, it will be. And if you are a medical professional, then we can allow you access to it. And the studies have been fantastic. At Chapman University, we lowered stress in 3 minutes by 13% for healthcare providers. At USC, 60 minutes, 94% stress reduction for healthcare providers. At at USC Norris Cancer Center, 91% of the people said we lowered their pain. Aspirin doesn't do that. Tylenol doesn't do that.
Wow.
Um, and the most recent study at AT Still University, within 4 weeks of using the app for 30 minutes a day, the pain level of 42 patients went from a 10.6 to a 4.3. That's a 60% reduction in 4 weeks of chronic
This is
pain.
huge. This is huge. And how long do they need to be watching something that makes them laugh before there's a difference being made? It sounds like it can be a very short
Uh,
period.
Short is good, longer is better. So in this case, it was 30 minutes a day. And the reason we recommend the videos on the app are because we've collated and curated them. We have a curator from USC, we have a curator who's a comedy major from Emerson, and myself. And we're combing through the videos to make sure that they're not triggering racist, sexist, nudity, violence, anything like that, politics. Um, and so they're basically humor that elevates, and that will trigger endorphins and serotonin and dopamine, which are the feel good, the love, and the growth and repair of cells type hormones. So they literally make you heal more quickly.
Oh, I just love this. And I believe this. I've been watching what's been happening with our son, Kevin. He
Mm.
is in Denver with his dog, Bowie. And when in between jobs, he's always done Uber driving for like 10 years. Well, he gets this rescue dog who's got attachment anxiety. And so he decided, well, let me just bring him with me, So he brings the dog with him, and Bowie sits in the passenger seat and he films the reactions of the people who get in the car. And they're like, oh my God, it's a dog. Like they've never seen a dog. And it brings so much joy. Laughter brings joy. Dogs bring joy. So
Right.
this he was on Good Morning America. He was on Inside Edition, People Magazine. He's all over the place now because he's bringing joy to people through the access to a cute puppy. I mean, come
That
on.
is amazingly wonderful. How fantastic. Yeah.
It just goes to show that
Mhm.
we humans need to have levity. We need to have access to love. Well, we can love easier if it's a dog or if it's a kid,
Mhm.
It's when we get grown up, we get a little bit afraid of each other. But dogs and babies and young people just bring out the liveliness in us, and that makes us more more magnetic. It makes us, when we're happy and when we're laughing, we're more fun to be with. We're more dateable, aren't we?
You are speaking exactly the truth. And in fact, on the Laugh M.D app, you'll see that we have a whole channel of dog and cat videos, and a whole channel of funny baby videos.
All right, Frank, here's the question. How can we become more humorous? You and I both know, like, women will say, I want a guy who makes me laugh. Well, I I just twitch when I hear that, because don't you and I both know women who cannot be made to laugh?
Yes, we do, Julie.
There's something else that happens in LA. I hear it happens in LA more than every place else, where something funny happens, and those of us who live in LA will say, well, that's funny, instead of laughing. Like it's an act of generosity to share your real life with the
Uh,
person who just tried to make you laugh. Do you find that's true in LA, where people like won't actually give you their laugh? They'll say, oh, that's funny.
no, Julie, that never happens to me. People just bawl hysterically at all of my jokes.
So how can we become more funny?
Uh, I have a couple of tips, and they might actually also apply to dating. And I am a professor as well, so I'm gonna speak in what is it, pedagogically?
Yeah.
Okay, there. I brag about myself and then I can't pronounce a word about my own profession.
Well, that's one type of humor, which is self-deprecating humor.
That is exactly right. You nailed it before I could even say it. Yes, exactly. Self-deprecating humor is great because it shows that you have humility. It shows that you don't take yourself too seriously, and it shows that you are open and vulnerable and open to conversation about your own personality. So, the best self-deprecating humor, if you want to see a good example of it,
Yep.
that Christmas movie that Hugh Grant is in, where he plays the prime minister. In that movie, Hugh Grant plays the prime minister of Great Britain, right? So he has the highest, most exalted position in that universe of the movie. And yet he is demure and self-effacing and uses, self-effacing humor in a way that makes him just so absolutely lovable. And in fact, in the movie, he winds up falling for someone who is very much not of his stature. So
Aha.
I won't
Very good.
ruin the movie for you, but I will tell you that that is the best example of self-effacing humor that I can think of. So if you can do that about yourself, then that's really good. The other thing, I'll give you a little trick, okay? So it requires, just like being good in a relationship does, it requires listening, active listening. So if you were to say, "Oh, I like peanut butter and jelly," right? And then later on in your conversation, you were to say, maybe we should go to the aquarium. If you put two things together that don't belong together, that the person said, and you said, well, why don't we knock off two things at once and go to the aquarium and have a peanut butter and jellyfish sandwich?
Jellyfish sandwich. Could that be considered a pun, Frank?
Uh, you'll have to speak with the analysts afterwards. But
Because I understand that puns are known as the lowest form of humor.
no, my humor is known as the lowest form of humor. Puns are just above that. But
So, some people can remember jokes and others can't.
right.
What is that all about? I can remember songs, I can remember quotes, poems, I can remember the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi, but I don't tend to remember jokes.
You know what that is? That is about the fact that when you're singing a song, it comes from the subconscious and it's brought forward into the mind. So you might be, like I've been singing a Meatloaf song to myself these days, right? And
What? Which one? You got to tell me so it gets stuck in my brain.
I I don't wish that curse on anyone. Um, but when you uh, when you have that song, it's coming, kind of from the back of your head into the frontal lobes, as opposed to when someone says, "Tell me a joke," then you're put on the spot and that fear of public speaking thing kicks in. And so it actually stifles humor. So doing the thing that I said, the self-effacing humor or the listening and putting two incongruous things together work really well. The most important thing in a dating relationship humor is to never make fun of the other person in a way that there's something that they cannot change, right? If it's something that
Yeah,
they
like
can,
if the guy's got a big wart on his nose. I met a guy like that one time. He had this big thing on his nose and he would talk and it would keep moving after it was just bizarre. But we got him married. We totally got him married. I don't
really,
know how, because he sat there and he said, I know you're thinking nobody's going to want to meet me because he had this really thick accent. He was this petite man from Russia somewhere. And he said, I know you're thinking nobody's going to want to meet me, but you know what? I'm fun and I'm funny. And after you spend enough time with me, you stop looking at that thing on my nose. And I'll be darned if they didn't get married and have kids together.
warts and all.
Yeah. So interesting. We can't be funny when we're self-conscious.
It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder, and that's why stand-up comedians are amongst the bravest members of our society, right? Because they're able to do it while they're self-conscious, while people are standing there and looking at them, having to do it from memory. I go so far back that I remember working with Larry David at when he was doing stand-up comedy at the Improv in New York, and he would go through little slips of paper and kind of uncrumble them from his pocket and then go, I have one here about a guy who breaks into his girlfriend's apartment to erase her answering machine. Oh, that's no good. So he was a terrible stand-up comic, but his premises were brilliant. So that's why he
Oh,
teamed up with Seinfeld.
interesting. You know what blows me away? I've watched some of Chris Rock's stand-up shows, like
Mhm.
90 minutes of him standing up and doing his thing. And then you'll see him in the same, doing the same thing in a different outfit, in a different outfit, in a different outfit. So you can tell that he's got this 90 minutes completely and totally
Right,
wired
right.
and do it 90 minutes. That blew me away. And then I realized, you remember the Learning Annex?
Sure. I taught there.
I used to teach for the Learning Annex. You were teaching humor, I was teaching dating. And you know Renee Piani. We're at
Oh, I
least we're
love Renee Piani.
yeah,
Yes.
I know you as long as I known Renee Piani.
Love
Well,
mechanic, I think, right?
the
Yeah.
love mechanics. So she and I started teaching these learning annex classes, and I was so nervous at the beginning because I was going to forget what I was going to say, and I had my whole script thing, and I
Hmm.
was still packing up a bunch of boxes, and I found the original script from my original learning annex class, and I would practice it as I was driving. Well, little by little, all of these things became part of what I can easily speak about today. It
Hmm.
took repetition. That's what it took
Hmm.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Repetition. And once you've memorized the lines, it's easier to appear to be spontaneous.
That's right. I suck at memorizing lines. I remember being in high school and there was a one act play and I did it with this friend of mine and oh my gosh, I totally forgot my lines. And not only that, the whole thing was about the hat that I was wearing. The whole thing was about the hat. Well, I left it backstage and forgot to wear the hat. And the guy I did the thing, he will never let me forget the worst thing. I had to just sort of pretend that I had a hat the whole time. So even those of us who don't remember lines well, we can learn to speak in front of people if we have repetition and get it down, you know?
That's true. That is the appearance of spontaneity. Um, I don't know if you're coaching your clients to memorize lines before they go into a date or to be more spontaneous.
Spontaneous, absolutely. I want people on
Hmm.
dates to be authentic and real and present. And we can't be
Mhm.
present with somebody if we're worried about what we're going to say, right?
Right, right, right. Well, that's why I'm giving you little hacks, right? So
Yes.
the listening and being able to call back, as we called it at SNL, it was a callback, right? So to call back the jellyfish from the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and to put those two things together in an incongruous way, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's another little trick. Of course, there's this self-deprecating humor. Of course, that's number two. And the third one I'll give you is an under-exaggeration or an over-exaggeration. So if you because again, those can either be self-deprecating or about the situation that you're in. You would never want to say to your date, well, you're so fat that you make the record skip at the radio station, right? You would never say that to your date.
You would get a second one if you did, but you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So, um, so, uh, I mean, there is insult humor, and there are people who will, um, get away with that, but that's more like stand-up comedy on stage kind of a thing. Dave Attell and those guys. But to under-exaggerate or to over-exaggerate is something where you would say like, oh, well, poor you, Julie, this interview is going on longer than the Gettysburg Address, right? So I'm way over-exaggerating. Or to say, I don't want to say I'm wealthy, but I can afford two pens, right?
So that would be under exaggerating. I'm so
Correct.
wealthy
Yeah,
I can afford two pens.
exactly.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and I'm
All
making
right.
this as I go along, but you can too. And because it's not about the other person, but it's about the situation that you're in, like, oh, we're driving around the restaurant looking for a parking space, and it's easier to find blank, 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 depending on your generation, Jimmy Hoffa, the Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I just looked up Tasha.
Oh, great. Okay.
She is beautiful.
He is. Yes.
She sells real estate all over the place, not just South Bay.
Not just South Bay. That's her specialty. But boy, like I said, Hollywood Hills, San Gabriel Valley, the south of France, Paris. She's fluent in French, by the way, and
Ah,
Spanish. In
is she
fact, my
funny?
mother's, what's that?
Is she funny?
She's adorable and wonderful.
So
Yeah.
give us an example of something humorous that happened during the dating process. Can you think of something that happened that might have gone south, might have caused things to go south, had you not had the ability to laugh about it? Can you think of an example?
Me showing up. Uh,
Did
very
she
precarious.
did she know instantly that you were a total goofball and great sense of humor and playful and all of that? You're very easy to get to know.
No, I think she thought I was a very serious diplomat from the Soviet Union, and that I was well versed in Dostoevsky and no, of course, yeah, I am a goofball. Who doesn't know that?
Yeah, and my husband's a bit of a goofball too. And I think I don't know if you know this, but how we met each other is he's the one who sold me my dating service membership. So first he took my money at his agency.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And then I flirted with him later once I finally got access to the library and I realized, oh my gosh, they just opened their doors here in St. Louis. They don't have very many people. And I just spent $1,450. Oh my gosh. So I thought, well, I can either just sit and wait for the slow trickle or ask the girls at the front, what about that guy who took all my money? What's the story with him? And they said, well, as far as I know, he's still single. Go have at it. So I knocked on the door and I said, what's the story with you, pal? I looked in the G book. I didn't find you. What's the deal? And he said, I'm thinking, oh gosh, he's gay. He's technically married. He's not saying anything, whatever. And he said, well, I'm not supposed to ask my members out. I said, well, what would you do if one of your members asked you out? And he said, if she was cute, I'd probably go. I said, come on, let's go have a beer. And
Oh,
yeah, and within 5 weeks, we got engaged, which was what Gil calls the conversation that got out of control.
oh, that's lovely. Wow.
So I train women to be playful and to
Mm.
be lighthearted and to open up play for men.
Hmm.
You guys are
Hmm.
just kids. You guys are. You love to play, you love to have fun. And sometimes we women can be too serious if we whip out our checklist. So, are you looking to have children and how soon? And, were you ever asked those questions from women who were like tick-tock about the kid thing?
Yes. Yes, I was. Yes.
How does that make you feel when you're the guy and you've got a woman who's interested in your sperm?
Uh, well, I prefer to first be on a first name basis, at least. So,
We can
get that out
sometimes
of the way.
we can get the cart before the horse sometimes as women because we know we don't have all the time in the world to do this thing called making babies. But then also in our
Hmm.
culture, I don't know how it is in Africa. I don't know what it's like in France, but here in the States, status, there's a lot of status built into marriage, having a significant relationship, having a committed partnership, and
Hmm.
Aunt Sally will be asking you at Thanksgiving, when are you going to get married, Julie? And when are you going to give me some children to play with? There's that
Hmm.
pressure. And I don't know if you guys feel it as much as we do. What do you say about that?
Hmm. Well, I don't feel like I'm really expert in that area because I was married for a while and we did try to have kids. It didn't work out. Luckily, because we're still friends, but the two of us could not have kept a houseplant alive, let alone a child. So, yeah.
In in what ways is this relationship with Tasha different? How is the way you feel with her different than the way you felt in a relationship that didn't actually stand the test of time?
Um, I think with Tasha, we both see this as our forever relationships, and we both see this as our um like, okay, you're the one for me. So all our planning is about creating permanence in our lives, right? We're also not spring chickens. Appearances may be deceiving, but we're not. So we I think are people who, look at the long term of things. And so we go to each other's doctor's visits. We are always interested in keeping each other healthier and that sort of a thing. So, what was the question?
It was basically, what is special about this relationship? It sounds like you were both ready to be in it for the long haul and committed to each other. And it sounds like what you do is you enhance each other's lives and you put effort into it. Going to your partner's doctor's appointments is really sweet, especially when it's not just because she's pregnant. And if you don't go, she's going to be mad at you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, it's neither one of those things. No. Uh, in fact, I did have a heart attack last month,
Ooh,
and I know, yeah. And I was, going down some bad roads, and Tasha was the Florence Nightingale of my life for that. She was just so incredibly generous with her time and her attention and her focus and her note taking and her attention to detail. And that is one of the reasons why I got such good health care and one of the reasons why I recovered so quickly.
wow.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got you on the show before you keeled over, dude. So what are you doing? You're changing your meds, you're changing your diet, exercise. You've always been slender and you seem to be in very good shape. So it's a surprise that you would have a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm everything that you mentioned has been changed. Yeah.
All right.
Everything you
Amazing.
mentioned. Hmm.
All right. Well, we want you around for a really long time. So stick to your diet.
Yes, exactly.
Who
Almost completely
misbehaves?
vegetarian. Yeah.
Who typically
Plant-based.
misbehaves more in terms of, drinking, eating, sweets, all that? Who misbehaves more, you or your wife?
It depends who you ask. She has criticisms of my diet. I have criticisms of hers.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
uh,
really cute.
yeah,
Absolutely.
who you ask. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your sharing with us about humor and the importance of it in our lives. Are you still doing fun little movies? That's when I first met you. You were doing, that's what your card said, fun little movies.
It did, yeah, it did, yeah. That profession kind of peaked. As I said, I made movies for HBO and Showtime and things like that, and a bunch of advertisers, and I won all those awards you can see back there and all that. So that kind of peaked, but now my focus, then my focus went on, teaching at the different universities about it, and uh, now my focus is on taking those movies and the comedic films of, hundreds and hundreds of other comedy films that appear on the Laugh MD app, from Seinfeld to Chris Rock to Key and Peele to Charlie Chaplin. I mean, everything is on there now. So it's about how we use comedy to improve health, for healing, to improve, medical outcomes, things like that. And we're doing it. We're the only ones who are doing it, but we're doing it.
Amazing. So thank you for agreeing to let me in so I can see what Laugh MD is all about. At what point will it be available to everybody? How long?
We're beginning the next round of testing. Our sixth study will be at the Oncology Institute, led by a Dr. Amitabha Mazumdar, who I am incredibly grateful to. This guy was one of the pioneers of stem cell research in oncology. Uh, and with Scott Michael Jensen, who's one of the top global leaders in all things digital and app and that sort of thing. So we're going in to that facility, and once we've proven out in that facility, then we'll start releasing it more and more. So ask your doctor if laughter is right for you.
We certainly will. Frank Chindamo, thank you so much for being here. I love who you are, and I'm glad that you gave us some of your wisdom today.
Thanks so much, Julie. Thank you a lot. Take care.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take this stuff to heart and you go out there and transform me to we for yourself. Thanks for listening.